All right, hey, what's up, everybody? I wanted to give you guys an update on the LS Swapped Audi project. Been spending the last year pretty much working on, built a new construction house and been spending a lot of time doing plumbing, electrical, all those things associated with the house. And this has been sitting in my driveway for, well, I think it's been about a year or so. So just now got this thing pulled in with the help of the lawnmower, because right now it does not run. Basically, long story short, I was scrambling to get this thing kind of on the road. Mainly I was trying to get it to the point where it was in one piece together. So when I did move, I was able to, pull it up on a trailer and have it together, not have bits and pieces, a separate engine block to take with me, yada, yada, yada. But essentially got greedy on the first test drive and took it down the road to go fill it up with some gas. And I didn't have my laptop with me, so I wasn't able to monitor the ECU, which this is running a Holley Terminator X ECU. So yeah, I didn't have any oil pressure. So, all right, any oil pressure gauges. So I probably toasted all the bearings in this thing. I believe the last time I had this thing running, it might have been knocking. I don't know. We'll see once we get this thing pulled out. But just wanted to give you guys a quick walk around, I guess. Maybe more of an explanation of what the hell this thing is. So I actually saw this car. This is a 2008 Audi A4. This is a 3.2 V6 is what originally came in this thing. A 6-speed manual factory, and it is the S-Line trim. It's in pretty good shape. There's the previous owner did kind of bump into something on the front, but car's from North Carolina, I believe. So really the body is very, very clean. But the story goes that I found this thing on Facebook Marketplace. The engine, it was not in running condition. It had been sitting up on a trailer for about a year or so, is what I was told. I got the thing home, trailered it home, and pulled the valve covers off. Took a look at it, and one of the valves was stuck. So the timing chains on the 3.2 had skipped a tooth, and the valves ran into the pistons, which is very typical Audi. They just don't seem to figure out how to do timing chains. So yeah, yanked that motor out and thought, what the hell, I wanted to get I've always wanted to have an Audi RS4, and the B7s have always been, I think, a good looking car. I mean, the proportions on them are good. You can get them in all-wheel drive, obviously, and 6-speed manual. So yeah, I figured, what the hell, let's try to put an LS V8 in this thing. So to give you a backstory, this is an LS4 that I got out of the junkyard for, say, 500 bucks. I actually picked this car up itself for, I think, 1,500 bucks with the blown up engine. But junkyard LS4, a B8 6-speed transmission. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. I plan to hopefully put a turbo on this thing at some point, but for now, just kind of want to focus this year before the warm weather is gone. I want to focus on getting this thing back on the road. And yeah, so hopefully in a few more weeks, I'll be pulling the motor out of this thing. I got a LC9, which is another aluminum 5.3. Picked it up very, very cheap from a friend, and it's a good working condition motor. So hopefully be able to swap that thing in there, or in here, and get this thing back on the road. You guys, I'm gonna show you like some other things on this car. I re-recorded this intro, so this is a different intro. I did end up climbing underneath the vehicle to show you a little bit more, which you'll see here in a little bit. But keep in mind, I scrambled to get this thing put together. So some things are a little bit hodgepodge or jerry-rigged. For example, this coolant plumbing is a little bit janky. So yeah, keep that in mind. Right now I just got truck manifolds on this thing that were chopped. Put some V-bands on them to make some downpipes. I guess what else can I show you? So this is, I've got the LS4 crank pulley on this thing, and the reason I did that is because you can run, you know, it's a very short stick out length, so it allowed me to keep these factory fans, even though they're very close, allowed me to keep these factory fans in place. And this is a LS4 water pump that we chopped and put some hose bungs on it, and yeah, made like a remote manifold, I guess, water pump manifold. And I've got a remote water pump that's controlled via PWM by the Holley Terminator. So yeah, my future plans for this thing, like I said a little bit ago, is to have a fun car that maybe I can take to work a couple days a week and run it up to the drag strip and yeah, have some fun with it. Like I said, I'm running LS4 motor. It's going to be an LC9. It's still going to be a 5.3. Plan to turbocharge this thing eventually. We'll see how well the transmission holds up. Might have some plans for the future if the transmission does not hold up. But I've got an Audi, what is it? 3-liter TDI S5, so European V6 TDI. You could get basically an S5, Audi S5 with the V6 TDI engine in it, and you could get it in 6-speed manual. So they made a factory twin disc clutch essentially. So hopefully that'll hold up to the torque for this thing in its current form, at least. So essentially I made a Bellhausen adapter to get this thing bolted to the Audi transmission. Made a crank adapter to bolt the Audi ring gear, I guess you would call it, to the LS motor. And then from there back, you've got just the factory flywheel. So I am using, you could replace this with a factory clutch. The factory flywheels fit in this thing. I did make the Audi 3-liter TDI clutch is a little bit strange because the spacing and everything is not the same because it's a twin disc. So there's no aftermarket single mass flywheels, and I don't really like the dual masses just because they're not known for reliability. So I did make a custom flywheel, but it's made to factory dimensions and everything. So like I said, I could swap that out with a factory clutch or flywheel, sorry, if I wanted to. But in the next video, I think I wasn't able to show you guys the interior too much, but I think I can actually sneak in here now and show you. So this thing looks pretty damn factory. Like I said, it's factory gauges right now. It looks pretty clean, looks factory, I think, to me. So the only modification I did have to make was transmission tunnel. The B8 transmission is much wider than the B7 that actually came in this thing. So the transmission tunnel had to be widened. So I ended up cutting this portion of the floor pan, I guess, out and widening it. If you look at the B8s, they're actually very similar to this. That's where I modeled it from. But the carpet actually does kind of fit. I just need to get I don't even know what that used to be. It's a factory cutout. I think there was like a vent or some shit there. So, but yeah, this thing, it looks like a factory A4 inside. Running a GM accelerator pedal, that's the only difference. Yeah. All right, I got this thing put up on the lift, so you guys can take a better look at this. I mean, obviously this thing's been sitting for a while. I have not actually tore into this thing or worked on it at all this year, just because I've been focusing on plumbing, electrical, yada, yada, yada with the new house. But Got it raised up so you guys can actually maybe take a look at, see underneath this thing, which is what I was trying to do with that first walk around video, but this should hopefully give you a better look underneath of this thing. And it's, like I said, filthy, dirty, because it's been sitting for so damn long. But, so I got I don't even remember what this is. This is a Morosa front sump oil pan. I plan on, in the future, basically making this very similar to what the Audi pan actually looked like. So they're much shorter and wider. So I'll be cutting this thing up hopefully this winter time, or maybe fabbing up a custom one. But here you can see the culprit of my problem. So this is a Jags remote mount oil filter kit, because I couldn't really fit a normal oil filter here, and I don't know, I wanted to have a better location for the oil filter, which is just nice right here. So yeah, basically me being stupid, I used whatever lines they supplied with that kit, and they had these cheesy worm clamps on here, and it blew off in the middle of a test drive. But yeah, so you can actually see it pretty well. So this is the B8 transmission. So this is what I was talking about. Like, look how much wider this thing is than like even the factory subframe. I had to notch this thing out. He's painted up again, but I notched out the factory subframe to be able to fit this thing in here. Essentially the difference between the B7 and the B8 transmission, which this is a B8, this whole front differential is basically right in line with the bell housing face. The axle shaft actually goes through the bell housing to connect to the other side for the other wheel. It's a definitely unique design, but what it allowed me to do was it allowed me to get this motor, this LS motor, to be as far back towards the driver as possible. Basically it hugs the firewall. And the key to that is that I can run an LS4 crank pulley and all the really short accessories off of the Audi, and I can use the factory radiator, fans, core support. None of that has to be hacked up, so it looks pretty factory. With the fact that this is a B8 transmission, I had to make custom axle shafts. I basically just took B8 axles and chopped them, welded them back together. I plan eventually to get some proper axles made, but enough of me blabbering about the little stuff. You guys can, you guys probably want to see the actual things that make this thing work. So this is, I need to readjust the camera here. So this is the adapter plate that I designed, and my dad is a tool and die maker, and he fabricated it for me. So this is just basically, I think it's it's a 1/2 inch thick steel plate that we just put both sets of bell housing bolt holes into. So this plate bolts to the LS motor, and then the Audi transmission bolts to the plate. There's dowel pins in both of them, so everything's concentric. And then this you see here is actually the stock B8 Audi ring gear. So the starter actually turns on those little teeth. I can barely see it, but I'm using the factory Audi B8. I think this is an S4 starter. I like the starter because it actually bolts to the transmission, so everything's lined up, and there's a dowel that actually keeps that centered up to the transmission, so I don't have to worry too much about that. But I did, and you guys will see this once I actually get this motor torn out of here a little bit. You can see the fine details, but I did have to modify the engine block in order to get clearance for that starter to work. As you can see, it is super, super tight there. So like I said, you'll be able to see it in detail later, but I did end up making a factory, and it doesn't look the best, but I did make a transmission mount for this thing. I don't really like it too much because you just got these two bolts here that hold that to the body. These are the factory bolts. I'd like to eventually make a whole custom subframe that ties everything together, so it ties the transmission bracket and the subframe together. And I'd like to see, I'm sorry for moving around, it's just hard to get under this car and show you guys and hold the camera. I'm not used to doing these videos too much. So basically what you're looking at here is the motor mounts that I had made. So this bolts directly to the block in the factory LS locations. And then this is the Audi motor mount bracket, which that ties into the subframe, which, I mean, it's in the same bolt location as the subframe here. I'd like to kind of get these separated somehow so I could be able to keep the motor in the car, but drop the subframe, for example, just to be able to get, I guess, I don't know, to access maybe like the starter and some things like that. It's just, everything's very, very tight. I used for now, I mean, you have to understand, this is basically, like I said, scrambled to get this thing together. So I just got things to work. Like, for example, you can see this is a thermostat from a BMW. So it had an extra port on it, so I just plugged it temporarily like that. Yeah, so there's some stuff that needs to be properly done. This is a little bit jerry-rigged, much worse than what I wanted or had in mind. But I am running a BMW electric water pump, which is controlled by the Holley Terminator, which I didn't even mention that. Yes, it has a Holley Terminator aftermarket ECU. This is just a, oh, maybe I'll make a different separate intro video and edit this out, but this is an LS4 which is a 5.3 liter aluminum block. I've got an upgraded camshaft in it, which I hope is still good, but yeah, I don't even remember what I was saying. So what else can we look at here? The drive shaft, we can take a look at that. So this is what I had came up with for the drive shaft. So this is obviously the V8 transmission, which they use CV joints for the drive shaft, which are freaking expensive to get a custom drive shaft made because obviously none of the links are factory. So this is just a normal slip yoke drive shaft, and I can't even remember what these are called, but essentially this is a CV to, what the hell are these called? U-joint, or yeah, it's a U-joint, right? Yeah, to a U-joint adapter. So that's on both ends here. And then I've got, so the factory, okay, so let me say this. So this transmission is out of a B8, it has a 411 gear ratio, and I needed a rear end that also had the same gear ratio. The one that came in the B7, this was a 3.2 V6 on a manual transmission, and it had, I think, a 475 or something weird. But this is a 411 out of a B6 A4. These things are pretty solid from my research, so hopefully this thing holds up. I mean, so this bolted in directly. Oh my gosh, there's a spider there. This bolted in directly to the B7. So this is a B6 differential and a B7 stock axles for now. We'll see how they hold up. Basically, all of this crap is just temporary, or, you know, I don't know what's going to break and what's going to work. I have no idea. Right now, I've just got the exhaust, as you can see, very poorly welded. It's just kind of fabbed together so we can, so I could get it on the road. But yeah. So let's see, you can kind of get a better idea about the custom, or the axle shafts, how we chopped them, and shortened them up. They do need shortened a little bit more because this thing, let me see if I can actually, I think they're a little bit too long, but I was able to utilize a lot of factory Audi components, like the whole subframe, besides where I cut it out, and the suspension, everything is factory Audi. Like even the oil pan, it clears the subframe very, very nearly, but this is the factory Audi A4 AC compressor, the power steering pump, the alternator. Yeah, those are all factory Audi. So I pretty much made some custom brackets to bolt these together. And like I said, you'll be able to see this a lot better when I get this thing ripped out of here. But yeah, the first thing I will be doing is getting some measurements for these damn oil filter lines and getting some proper high pressure lines, so that does not ever happen again. I mean, it's not only that, it's the fact that I didn't have the Terminator actually configured to, I don't have any dash lights because obviously this thing doesn't talk to the Audi dashboard right now. I do have some plans eventually to maybe get some CAN bus interface to communicate with the Audi gauges. From what I've researched, it should be feasible. Now I can't even open the door. Great. But like I said, this thing still has the factory gauges in it, factory shift knob. I did end up having to use a GM accelerator pedal because I couldn't get the Audi pedal to communicate with the Terminator, but I've got this, all of the wiring tucked away in here, and then the Terminator is actually mounted underneath the dash. If I could open the door, I'd actually show you guys. But yeah, leave some comments. Let me know what you want to see specifically. Yeah, like I said, this thing, the key, what I really wanted to get out of this was a V8 with 6-speed manual and retain the Audi all-wheel drive system. So yeah, like I said, leave some comments. Let me know what you guys want to see specifically. And like I said, look forward to some more videos coming up here pretty soon. Thank you.